Good evening everyone, it's Cllr Ray here and welcome to my second Ask Paul live. We did the first one last week and it seems to have been relatively successful for a very short notice, so here we go with a bit more of a pre-planned one. I'm going to leave it a couple of minutes before we start going to let people maybe post any questions as they come on live, so we're going to probably start in about 2 or 3 minutes. If you are watching, you will see I'm ably assisted by Peggy, my basset hound. So if you do hear any rustling, it's Peggy behind me. So, as I said, as we just wait for people to come on, let's just have a look to see who is actually watching already or who has said hello. Let's have a look. There we go. So we've got one viewer so far. I've already had a couple of questions come in via Facebook and via Twitter, so we'll come to those in a minute. Hello Charlotte. Hello Brenda, I can see you've joined us as well. So as I said, we're going to leave it just a couple of minutes to let people get connected, maybe put down any questions they've got, and then we'll get going properly at about a couple of minutes time. As you can see, I'm obviously doing this at home like most people are doing their things at home at the moment, and it's probably quite frustrating. It's a lovely sunny day outside and it would have been nice to... Hello Anne, thank you for joining us as well. That's good to see. So lots more people join us, which is brilliant. As I said, going to leave it till about 2 minutes past and then we'll start rolling on, because I said we've had a few questions already. Hoping that the quality is a bit better this time than last week. It was a bit grainy. Hopefully you get a bit more of a high definition video this time. So just give it another 30 or 40 seconds and then we'll start going. Hope you're all doing well as well. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us as well. I can see you've just logged on to the live feed. That's brilliant. We've got 11 people watching so far. More than last week then, so we're doing better than we did last week. So we'll give it a start in terms of the questions I've received about now, and as people join they can obviously ask questions to go away. So please do comment in my comment section, either send me a direct message or tweet me depending on what your preference is, and I'll pick it up from all 3 sources. So the first question I got today was from Brenda, and it was in relation to the government's letters that went out to people and the people that have been told they have to absolutely stay indoors for 12 weeks. So this is a national NHS scheme. About 1.5 million of the most medically vulnerable people in the country were written to by the government to advise they must absolutely stay at home. As part of that, they do get a dedicated contact number to a dedicated contact centre who will be supporting them, and food parcels. So Brenda's question was, is this different to the council scheme? Yes, it is in part. So though the council will be supporting part of this mechanism, the scheme set up by the central government is for that 1.5 million people that are deemed the most severe at risk, and they have a dedicated line. If you are vulnerable and you've been asked to stay at home for 12 weeks, then that's when the council support structure comes in around our dedicated contact number for advice and support and help. Now, again, I'll put that number in the bottom of the video for those people that don't have it. So if you've got a letter from the government, you've got a dedicated number, they will be dealing with your support directly. If you have been asked to isolate yourself for 12 weeks because you are vulnerable and at risk but have not received that communication, that's where you go into the council's support. And again, as I've said, I'll bob that number at the bottom. Let's just see if we've had any other questions just while I've been giving that first answer. Let's have a look. Sorry, the joy of doing this on 2 different screens at once. Hello Sandra, thank you for saying hello. So another question we've got over the response to the police to exercise. So some of you will remember from about a week ago I did put a post on Facebook around the police saying that you shouldn't go large distances to exercise in car, etc. Caused a bit of a furore on social media. Apparently the police were doing this across the country. The latest guidance from the government doesn't really clear it up too much. What it now says is that you shouldn't travel excessively. Now, what excessively is still down to the determination of the police. So there is still a little bit of grey area there, but what they're saying is if you don't have access to quality green space near you, you can travel a small distance to get there. But again, they've not actually quantified what that is. They've said reasonable, so that will be down very much to the officer and the circumstances in question. So maybe just watch out for that one. Wow, we've got 19 people watching now. I'm certainly more popular than I was last week. One of the other questions we've got in recently as well, just while I'm waiting for some more questions to come on, is in relation to the reason why we're not doing the brown bins. This has been covered a couple of times actually, but it's just really to prioritise our staff. We do have quite a bit of staff off now due to self-isolation and also having the virus. So we've redeployed staff from our Clean the Neighbourhoods team. They're the people that obviously clean the street on a day-to-day basis, and then are supporting the bin crews. But to reduce their workload, they are now doing blacks and green bins. There's some really great advice on zero waste leads for anyone who just want to know how they can reduce the waste they're using, just to make sure you are minimising that as much as possible. And they're doing a regular kind of bin report when things are happening. Let's have a look. Some more questions. More questions coming through yet. Hello, Ifran. Thank you for joining the feed. Hello, Kim. Right. Question over council tax. This came up last week as well. Some people are asking why is the council still charging council tax, and it's very much based on financial means. So there are certain people who are working from home, who are on salary. I'm one of them, I'm on salary, and actually we're still in a position to pay our council taxes. We've not actually lost any income. What the council is doing, however, is where someone is financially struggling, we're asking them to get in contact with the council contact centre. They will look at those persons' personal circumstances and basically look at what can and can't be done. If it's just a case of they need to discuss a payment plan or all the way up to a deferral, they will discuss it. The reason why it's not blanket is not everybody's situation is the same. We want to prioritise support to those that absolutely most need it, and that's why there's not a blanket thing on council tax. It will literally depend on circumstance and who you're speaking to. What are some of the other questions we have had this week? There have been some questions over NHS Nightingale in Harrogate. So this was in the papers today actually. It has been confirmed that the NHS is building with the army, is building, I think it's a 500 bed facility in Harrogate. Now this is going to be a stand down service, so the idea being that people who are recovering, etc., will then go to the stand down service, so they're taken out of the main hospital population, etc. That was only announced today. It's obviously a much smaller facility than the one being built in London. It's only around 500 beds, but it's to give that extra supportive capacity. Okay, we've got a question in relation to people travelling with the Easter bank holidays. Will there be more police presence for people going to the seaside? Yes. So the police's position on this is really clear. You don't travel unless you need to. As I've said, there's been some confusion over exactly what that means in terms of can you go to a park for a bit of exercise, and as I've said, they've come out with reasonable distance now as a clarification. But there is no justification for someone who doesn't live at the seaside going to the seaside. How the police maintain that is down to them operationally. It will obviously transfer between different police forces. So West Yorkshire Police doesn't have any seaside locations, for example, so they don't really have an operational policy over that. But some of the other police authorities may do so. Just be aware that there may be questions that if you are going to the seaside in the holidays, you may get questions as to why you're doing that and asked to reconsider your decisions. What the National Police Kind of Advisory Board has said of Chief Constables is officers are to use their common sense. But realistically, travelling all the way to the seaside if you're in Leeds is probably quite a straightforward case of you're not keeping to the stay-at-home policies. Okay. Had a problem with Sarah. Had a problem with our local stores refusing to help disabled to see message features. Yeah, I have got your message, Sarah. I've not gone through it, and I am obviously aware of the problems you've had in general. And I'll give that a bit of look. I mean, all the stores should be really doing their best to support disabled customers as best as possible. Where they're not, then obviously there are individual issues to look at. And I'll have a proper look at your message in due course. So if you'll let me have a look at that afterwards. Let's have a look. Is there anything else here? Right, I've got a direct question in relation to tenants and landlords. Can my landlord evict me at the moment? Yes and no. This is not quite a straightforward question. So the rules brought in by the government around this and the guidance is that landlords, be it the private sector or the private sector, social sector, have to give 3 months notice. So it's not quite the same as saying that they can't give you an eviction notice, but what they have said is you have to be given 3 months notice. If you don't leave at that end of that 3 months notice, at the moment the court system is saying they will not proceed with eviction cases. So essentially, if the period of lockdown is extended or if the government decides to extend its protocols, effectively there's a 3 month period that you have to be given notice, and if for some reason you are given that notice and at the end of that 3 months we're still in the situation we are now, basically the government has told the court system don't proceed with the eviction process. So it's not a case of that you can't be evicted, it's more a case of they have to give you at least 3 months notice before they go any further. Let's have a look. Yeah, I appreciate, Sarah, they've probably not been the most interested. I'll have a proper look at your message afterwards and we'll have a proper chat about that. So Nicola, thank you for your unending support and work, not only over the current but always. Mine isn't a serious one, but what is your dog's name and how are you coping? This is, to answer Nicola's question, this is Peggy. She's just over 6 months old and she's never had so much attention, so she's getting lots of additional walks, which is driving me slightly batty, and she's constantly demanding attention. So probably not the most serious of questions in the world, definitely, but you know, life's always a little bit easier with a poochie, and she's enjoying sitting on the sofa there. Let's have a look. So I hope you answered that. You know, very glad I got her. Right, some other questions are coming in. This one is via email. Let's have a look. I've seen an idea online about people collecting plants. Do you think this is a good idea? And is this something that could help them? Right. This is in relation to some of the big stores basically saying that who do plants and that basically the plant's going to go to waste. Now the big council nursery, the area, the types of plants we have there, which are mainly actually for parks and country, are all fine. They can be dealt with by a small team, so we're not going to have any wastage. In terms of the private sector, there was a conversation between the person that suggested it and actually one of our senior officers, and the senior officer gave a reply on Twitter saying that it's not something the council can support with because they're concerned over how you do infection control, etc. But of course, if other private organisations want to donate their plants and they've got a way of doing it, I think it's great. As you can probably tell, I've got a lot of plants around here, thanks to my other half, so it's always good for your well-being. Brenda, still activity on the managed zone, people ignoring the ban. So this is obviously a West Yorkshire Police operational issue. They have made it clear that under the guidelines, the managed approach is effectively suspended for the moment and they will move people on. Beyond that, I don't have a lot of information on it personally because it doesn't technically cover my ward. And I'm sure the other councillors in question for Beaton and Holbeck can pick that up, and I'm happy to pass that on to them. But from my understanding is it has been suspended. The police will move people on, and they will use their enforcement powers that they have where necessary. Let's have a look. Getting a few more questions in today, which is good. Let's have a look. How long do you think we'll be in this position? I'm not going to comment because I don't know myself. The government has said they're going to review this every 3 weeks for potentially up to 6 months. Like everybody else, I'm hoping it's not 6 months. But in the end, I think we've got to do what we've got to do to protect the most vulnerable in our society. So I can't really give you an answer, and I won't really want to give you an opinion because I really don't know myself. Let's have a look. Another question in from Simon. Hi Paul, my friend Marriott has broken her key in her lock on her and Mia's. Let's have a look at that so I can get more detail on it. Right, Simon, if you could send me the details about that as a direct message to my Facebook with the relevant address, and I will get on to Mia's tomorrow to find out what's going on for you. If it's a case you can't get in now, there is an emergency number on the council's website. If you just type in Leeds City Council emergency, it'll come up with emergency house repairs, and if someone's broken the lock and they can't get into their property, then they'll do emergency repair. If they've still got access but it's another key that's broken, just send me the details and I'll pick that up tomorrow if that's okay. Let's have a look. Why is the market still operating? So Cllr Market is a Leeds City Council owned building. The market is still operating for food purchases only. All non-essential retail apart from food has been stopped. Mainly because there's a lot of people that live in the city centre, to be fair. I mean, on my side of the city centre ward boundary, I've got 9,000 constituents. On the Little London side, there's probably close to about the same. So the market's open for food retail, lovely, wonderful fresh produce. It's obviously a lot less people in there now. Footfall in the city's down 90%, which is obviously incredibly important during this time. Obviously that will be reviewed in line with the government's requirements as and when they ask us to make amendments, but that's why the market is open at the moment, just to really serve those customers. Let's have a look. Any other questions coming through? Nice. Let's have a look. Any update on volunteers, Sarah? So, yes, we've got, I think it's over 6,000 people now that have volunteered. The hubs are working through now. I know you raised an issue because you hadn't been contacted yet, and I did send an email off about that, so won't go into too much detail on the public live feed, but I'll pick that back up. But the volunteer network set by the council, I mean, the phenomenal amount of volunteering put forward by people is unimaginable, but they are literally in the case of trying to get them out to the right people. But I'll pick up your particular details separately if that's okay. Again, Sarah, our council's doing just emergency repairs. Yes, with a slight caveat. So there's not a definitive list, but essentially there are certain things that we deem absolutely we must repair because your property flooding, you don't have heating, etc. What they have said though is they will also look at the circumstances. Something that might not be deemed as an emergency for one person, actually because of a person's health needs or requirements, they actually deem it to be an emergency, so they will look at it. So what I would say to you is if you do have a repair requirement and you are in a Leeds Homes property, just get in contact with them. Sometimes what might not be deemed as necessary as emergency for one person might be deemed as an emergency for another person because of their personal circumstances. Let's have a look. Is there coming thick and fast today, these questions? Let's have a look. Anything else coming through? No, that's fine there. Okay. Anything email? Another email question. Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm just trying to read this one. Right, okay, that makes sense now. the basic question is, at what point do you feel that, I'm trying to get this question right, that we'll be able to go back to a brown bin collection? Sorry, they're trying to read through the question. Honest answer, I don't know. It will depend on staff numbers and staff absence, so we'll need to get back to that one. Let's have a look. Okay, another one. Do I need to claim for the furlong, or will the business I work for do that? So, if you've been furlonged, which is the process of a business saying basically they can't operate, and therefore they're keeping their staff on the books, but they're not going to pay them. All those companies that inform the Treasury basically that they're doing that, they will be paid grants automatically at the end of April. Now, the employer itself, whether they pay you during that process is a different question. So essentially they will have to pay you, but they don't necessarily have to pay you until they get their grant. So there is a little bit of a gap over there. But if you have been furlonged, 80% of your wage will be paid by your employer. Now, just in terms of businesses and self-employed people, there's a huge amount of advice, and I'll put this into the comments at the end of this, on the council's website at leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus/business. It's got all the latest information about the government schemes and support mechanisms there. It's got useful links to the government sites and also to our support mechanisms that we've got here in Leeds. So I would recommend you do look at that. There's also some information on there about how to get in contact with some of the employers that are actually recruiting during this, particularly in the supermarket sector. Let's have a look. Any more questions coming through? Hi Paul, there's a problem with residents parking on the drop curb path outside Foxway next to Hunslet Mill, forcing people to push chairs. Right, I will pick that up. So parking in front of a drop curb is a police enforcement matter. So what I'll do, Janet, is I will pick that up with West Yorkshire Police tomorrow and ask them to do that. It's only a civil matter where it's actually parking restrictions such as double allowance, etc., where the council has responsibility. But I'll pick that up for you with the police tomorrow and make sure they are aware of that. Please just bear with them at the moment. Again, they're having to prioritise their resource, but we'll put it onto their radar for you. Let's have a look. Is there anything else coming in? Let's have a look. So I'm just reading some of these comments. Are the council still cutting grass around sheltered housing? To my knowledge, it depends on who the contractor is. So, and I would need to check this, so this is not 100% understanding. So, certainly our Parks and Country staff are prioritising essential repairs and essential maintenance, but the council also uses a lot of contractors, GM Continental for example, and their working arrangements may be slightly different. So I will need to pick that up as a separate question because I don't actually have a definite answer for you, I'm afraid. I've got a question. Jacob Goddard, what's going on with the football season? Jacob, you know I don't follow football, so I have literally no idea. You're probably best asking Councillor Lewis that rather than me. I literally have no idea about football. Janet, if you can work from home and a company asks you to go into the office, should you? It's for someone else, not myself. I think the question is, it depends. The government's advice on this has been really, really clear. Unless you have to, you should be doing things at home. And I suppose the question is, if it's a meeting and they're working from home already, then they should be able to do that remote. If it's something absolutely critical to the function of the business and it needs a person to be there, then that's probably different. And that's where there's some greyness in the government's regulations over whether it's essential or not. So what I would say, I would get them to question, actually, if it's just a meeting, can they not just do it face to face? Can they not just do it electronically, like we're talking over the internet now? If it's actually an essential business critical function that physically requires someone to be there, then the employer does have the right to ask them to come in, but they have to follow the government's stringent guidelines around social distancing, protection, etc. So it will really depend on the scenario, unfortunately. Let's have a look. We've got more comments coming in. Let's have a look. Make sure I've not missed any. Again, welcome to the increasing number of people that keep coming on this. Apparently this is more exciting than I thought it was going to be. So I've done that one, I've done that one, I've done that one. So that's up to date for the Facebook comments. Let's see if there's any on Twitter. Sorry about this, I'm trying to multitask at the same time. I really need someone else sat next to me doing this with me, feeding me questions, but I'm just not as high-tech or as important as the Prime Minister, I suppose. Let's have a look. Harlech Road, alright. So I am aware someone sent me an email about the issues happening on Harlech Road and Beeston Hill. I'm aware it's basically become a free-for-all for fly tipping at the moment. I have sent an email to our Cleaner Neighbourhoods team to see if they have any capacity over that. Our Cleaner Neighbourhoods team, again, the people who clean the streets, empty the council litter bins, a lot of them have been redeployed to help our waste teams, the people that pick up your bins, basically. So I'll see if there's any spare capacity. I can't guarantee there will be, but we will endeavour to try. I do know it's bad, I've seen the photo. Let's have a look. Any other questions so far? Okay, I put a post about this on Facebook yesterday. Am I okay to walk my dog? Yes, you are. You are okay to walk your dog, but it should be part of your daily exercise where possible. There is a particular issue for professional dog walkers because they tend to walk more than one dog, and there's whole rules around social distancing engagement. Essentially, a dog walker can still operate as long as they're walking one dog effectively or multiples of their dog from one household where possible as part of their daily exercise. Not a great situation if you're in the dog walking trade. But depending on how you classify if you're self-employed, you should therefore be able to, as long as you've put in your tax return for 2019-20 or 2018-19, have started operating in 1920 and had the intention of operating in 2021, you should be able to claim up to 80% of your revenue up to a maximum of £2,500 per month. So if you are in that group of people who were professional dog walkers who can't really operate and you meet those criteria, that's great. Literally just, it's something on my Facebook about this, there's something on the council's website, or just search for that as well, and they will, on the website, and they'll probably help. Leads further information. Just okay, I'll give you a call about that tonight or tomorrow, Anthony, so thank you for that. I'll find out exactly what you're referring to at that point. Let's have a look. Is there anything else coming in? Let's have a look at Twitter, see if there's any DMs coming there. That's fine. Another council workers. So another question on council workers out and about doing their job. So I think this was raised last week, and I think it's a pertinent question. So there is work going on still in the city, essential repairs, essential road projects. Now the council is putting in place stringent distancing requirements. Where that can't be met, then they will look to suspend it. A lot of our house building projects that we're doing at council, for example, with our contractors, have stopped. But most of the council workers you'll see out doing road repairs and things like that, they are essential to the functionality of the city or that particular piece of infrastructure. So all I would say is, you know, try and be appreciative that some of our council workers have got a lot of stick for doing their job, which is not particularly fair in these challenging times. So we just ask that you show some patience and consideration. Let's have a look. Is there anything else so far? Big hugs to Peggy. I will pass those big hugs on to Peggy, and thank you for the stay safe as well, Janet. That's greatly appreciated. Let's have a look. email question in again, and I've literally just put something about this on my Facebook actually, so you might want to look at the post below this. Scams. We are noticing a huge increase of scams in relation to the virus, literally preying on people's fears and worries. Have a look at the post that's literally just below this live video. You'll see some information from trading standards there. Basically, there's a lot going about, so just be really extra vigilant. The last thing you want to do at this particular moment is get scammed, which is not exactly great at any time of year, particularly this when people are in a vulnerable position. Let's have a look. Is there advice in multiple languages? Yes, there is. We just got a link today, and I've not put it onto my Facebook yet, of the advice about the virus in, I think it's 35 languages that's been translated by the government. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to that on my Facebook accordingly today or tomorrow morning. There's also a link to advice in British Sign Language as well for those that are visual, for those that are hearing impaired, should I say, or deaf. So I'll get that on there as well, because it's really important that all members of our society obviously get that information, and you'll be able to share that accordingly. We got anything else coming through? Phil Coates, is Park and Ride still going ahead? It's yes, it is. Now we've literally just got an email from Highways England today about their element of the works around the infrastructure near Park and Ride. So the Park and Ride still is going ahead. I'm not 100% sure what's happening with our bit of the build project. I'd need to double check with the relevant team. But the Highways England bit is still operating. And I'll put an update about that onto my Facebook later today, because I've literally got that email through about an hour ago before this, so I haven't had a proper read of it, Phil. So I'll put you a full update on Facebook slightly later today or tomorrow morning, if that's okay. Because I've not read it myself fully yet. Let's have a look. That's fine. So no question there. No question there. Okay, so I've got no questions at the moment. So while I'm waiting for a couple more questions, I'll try and do a couple more updates about what's going on, if that's okay. So just as kind of where we are, so we've launched in all the wards now our relief hubs. So in Hunslet and Riverside, our main hub is the Involve Centre, etc. There's 33 across the city. What we're also now doing as councillors is we've been given £10,000 of what's called our wellbeing funds early. So we're now discussing how we support some of the smaller organisations in the area, because basically the more people that helps, the better. And a lot of these smaller organisations are feeding into the bigger structure the council set up via the volunteering work with voluntary action leads. So we're now just discussing how we support those. So there'll be more information about that coming out in due course as we finalise who gets that extra support, etc. In terms of a couple other things, again, there's a big post on my, relatively big post on my page further down about homelessness. Really big question for city centre residents, because homelessness is obviously much more prevalent in the city centre. The council has got extra provision in place to support those who are homeless in the city centre. Some of that has been divided into people that have symptoms, people that have the virus, and then just additional provision. A lot of people have taken that extra provision up that normally would not take up council provision, because they're obviously naturally worried themselves. There is still a small contingent of people for a variety of reasons which aren't taking up the council's provision, and the council and West Yorkshire Police are in conversations with the government about how they want us to approach this. Just because of the government's mandated, they want nobody to be on the street during this. But it's complex. Homelessness, street homelessness is always a complex issue. So the council is looking for a guidance about what it needs to do around that group of people that aren't taking up that provision. So we'll be back on that. Sarah, in relation to your question, the Involve Centre. The Involve Centre is a building which is basically turning into a community centre next to Hunslet Hub and Library. So it's just the opposite side of Morrison's and to the side of the library. Does a load of really great things. It has a provision there, extra educational provision. Kurdish House are based there, which is supports the Kurdish community in Leeds. There's a variety of church groups that go there, youth club, the council youth club in the area. Really great venue, can't speak of it highly enough. Let's have a look. Any other questions? So this is much more intense than a residents meeting because, you know, there's more people from all over the place sending questions. I'm getting it from 4 different formats. Let's see if I've got anything on WhatsApp. Actually, I didn't check my WhatsApp questions. No, I don't get that question. What does that say? Okay, so the question is basically are the police being heavy-handed? No, I don't think they necessarily are. I think there's a lot of confusion. Unfortunately, the government's produced legislation which says X, Y, and Z. And then they've produced guidance which says X, Y, and Z, but with a lot of range of possible options of how you do that. And what the police are doing, like every organisation, is they're catching up. You know, it's going to take time to get this right. I mean, hopefully this is not for an extended period, but if it is an extended period, everyone's in the learning curve. I think the additional advice that's come out from the government around how far you can travel for exercise hasn't actually been overly useful because it says still reasonable distance. I think some of the other guidance hasn't been overly clear, but that does give each individual police force, and bear in mind we don't have a united police force in the United Kingdom, in England, we have different police forces. It gives them operational freedom to a certain extent. So I don't necessarily think they've been overly heavy-handed, but they have perhaps been a bit they've over-interpreted in some respect, but that's because the guidance hasn't been very clear is the honest answer. I just think we should use common sense, all of us. You know, if something isn't necessary, then it isn't necessary, and you know, this is about saving lives right now. Let's have a look. Yeah, Brenda, I get your point. I think, you know, I think the national body that advises the police on standards is giving guidance out now, and I think they've probably not been as quick as would have been helpful interpreting the guidance into a national format. I think as we go over the weeks, as we go forward, that will become much clearer. I think certainly on the exercise bit, which, you know, I got a lot of stick for that on Twitter, you know, it's difficult because they're interpreting. The difficulty is when you've got guidance and you've got legislation and the two don't necessarily match up. Sorry, I'm being bitten by the dog. The two don't necessarily match up, then you've got an issue over where that grey area is and the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. And it's, I actually feel really for the police at the moment, and I think it's a case of them learning back. I mean, in not any normal situation, there'll be more scrutiny, there will be the court system to properly challenge things. We're in extraordinary times, so I think everyone's in a difficult spot. Being attacked by Peggy. Peggy, go over there. Go over there. Let's have a look. I never work with dogs. Let's have a look. Okay, no more questions. So, you know, there's another 20 minutes of this, folks. You sure you don't have any other questions for me? I've got no questions on Twitter, on Facebook, via email, or via WhatsApp. So, you know, there must be more questions than this. I'm daring people now, I'm daring people. Let's have a look. My dog can hear Peggy. I can certainly hear and see Peggy at the moment. As I said, she's just had a bit of a gnaw on my finger because she's bored. She's wanting a bit of attention. Let's have a look. No, nothing else coming through. That's fine. No questions on there. No questions there. I mean, next Friday, yes, I will still be doing these every Friday. You know, from my point of view, you know, we normally have residence meetings. I have surgeries. I mean, people can still email and call me and stuff, but I think, you know, it's my job as an elected representative to be present. And actually, sometimes it's nice to be challenged without being preempted. Keeps me on my toes. So certainly these will be going every Friday until this ends. What I will probably be doing is actually making this a regular event anyway. So once this does end, these will probably be fortnightly or monthly as part of my normal kind of suite of engagement with residents. So just because the questions are starting to dry up, what I'll do is I'll just remind some people some kind of key information, and then we may call it quits. So if you need advice on any of the support mechanisms or services that Leeds City Council are running, please do visit leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus if it's for you as a citizen or your community. If you are a business or self-employed, please do visit leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus/business, and that has all the collected information about business, self-employed people, relief, etc. Please do make sure you're following advice from official bodies. So we're looking at Public Health England, the UK government, the council. We know there are a lot of fake accounts out there at the moment trying to take advantage of the situation, and obviously we want to try and protect some of the most vulnerable. I will put the number for the support line into the comments at the end of this, because I think that's really important. And please do share those details, because the more we share it, the more people we can let know the help's there, that there is a lot of help going on. Let's see, any more questions come through? This one's coming from WhatsApp. You have a lot of plants. They're not my plants. They are mainly my partners. You should see our garden. We're turning it into an allotment at the moment. So there is quite a few, and they'll be very ecstatic that someone asked about their plants. So they went, did anyone ask last week? And I said no, and they were quite upset. So there we go, someone asked about the plants. So probably a frivolous question, but there you go. Let's have a look. What are you doing for city centre residents? Good question. So city centre is about a third of the ward I represent lives in the city centre. There's some really good Facebook groups and that, should I say. There is now a dedicated city centre Facebook group for all of the city centre, because it covers 4 wards technically, and that is at www.facebook.com/groups/Leeds City Centre residents. Well worth a look. We're going to use that as the main kind of contact point for all of the city centre going forward. So please do get in touch with that. And again, if you do, you know, live in a particular, let's say Hunslet's got loads of Facebook groups for it. South Leeds in general, Beeston Hill. So I do recommend looking at those where possible. What else come in? Do I need anything? Do I need any special insurance if I am volunteering? Depends. So if you are going via the council's volunteering system, that's you've signed up as a volunteer, you've been sent out by our community hub for your area, no, you're covered by council liability. If you're volunteering with another big organisation, really established ones like the neighbourhood networks, etc., they will have their own liability insurance, so you won't need that. If you're doing it alone, or if you're a really small group that's come together in a mutual aid group, then there is a potential that you will need some form of liability insurance just to cover yourself in case anything goes wrong. I would basically get advice on that from a specialist if necessary. It's not to deter people from doing it, because some of the smaller mutual aid groups are getting into really niche, vulnerable groups. but there is a potential liability issue, so just be aware of that. But if you do it via a big organisation that does this on a regular basis, or some format you covered, if you do it via the council or the VAL and the VAL system, then you're covered by the council's liability insurance accordingly. Let's have a look. That's fine. Right, so I'll give it another minute, see if I've got any other questions. Oh, let's have a look. Economic concerns over shops and restaurants filing for bankruptcy. Yeah, there are. I mean, I think the government, to be in fairness to them, and this is coming from me bearing in mind my political persuasion, the government's political persuasion, I think have done an okay job. They need to do better. It needs to be a little bit more comprehensive than it is. But they have actually put in quite a substantial amount of support for small and medium businesses. There is a gap in the charity sector, which is a problem, which is being looked at. There is a gap for some of the smaller companies in terms of how they operate, which again I know members of Parliament are really pushing for. I think the big issue for a lot of businesses is not that they won't get support, it's that depending on what they're applying for, they may not get support until, in some cases, the end of April, in other cases till June if they're self-employed and they run their business on that basis. So it's a complicated message. Hopefully the support mechanisms will mean a lot of businesses do survive, but realistically I think we have to accept some will fold. Some big national organisations have already folded. It's only realistic that some smaller ones will as well. This is unprecedented in peacetime, and I with all the will in the world, I don't think any package the government could put in, even though I think they could put in more, would be enough to cover what we're going through. Right, unless anyone's got any last burning questions, I think that's been quite a few questions for the last 45 minutes. So I'm sure you're sick of hearing my voice, and I'm probably sick of getting my social media posts into every group every 5 minutes at the moment. But I do think it's really important that we as councillors and as a council do try to keep you informed about what's going on. A lot's changing really, really quickly. And just taking the example of the exercise issue, one thing advised then turned into another thing 3 or 4 days later. So things are changing. So again, just to make sure you're getting regular information, keep looking at Facebook site from the councillors. Also look at the council's website, again, leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus if you're a resident or it's a community related issue, or leeds.gov.uk/coronavirus/business if it's to do with business issues or self-employment. There is a huge amount of information on there. And on that, I will leave it at that. If you do have any other questions, bob them into the comments. I'll pick them up afterwards. Thank you for listening. I hope that the quality was a little bit better this time than last time. If you found this useful, please do bob me a comment to say so, just so that I know. And if you've got any suggestions on how I improve doing this, please also do that. This is a new experience for me as well. This is the only second one I've done, and I'm hopeful over the weeks, and hopefully not months, but over the weeks ahead we'll get this into a much better format for you. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, and most important of all, stay home, stay safe, and let's get through this together. Thank you. If I can learn how to turn this off now, this is going to be the